Hey, everybody, and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not News, your favorite podcast about fake news. I'm Beth.
And I'm Kelly.
Hey, Kelly, how's it going today?
I've had some better days.
Have you? What's going on?
Today was a little stressful. We started recording late because there was a medical emergency. There was some hot coffee type issues going on in the household.
Wait, I love coffee.
Yeah.
Was coffee involved?
No, coffee was not involved. Do you remember that case? Do you remember the case of the lady who got burned, severely burned? It didn't happen quite that bad. But so my beautiful, sweet, darling husband knew that we had to record tonight. So he went out and got us dinner and he got us ramen. And as soon as he grabbed the bag to get it out of the car, the entire bottom of the bag exploded onto his legs and crotchal region.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So boiling hot ramen broth all over him. And he was in a lot of pain. So we're a little late recording, but that's okay.
Yeah, we're also late because I just got out of Malaysian jail for saying that ramen was not the best soup to have in your lap. So there's actually some things going around with Malaysian jails.
There are. You must have gone to jail because of their new fake news laws, Beth.
What a segue.
Yay!
Okay, before we go there, let's back up a second. That was just a little teaser. So I want to tell you really quick about a conversation that I had way back before this podcast was not even in my head yet, right?
Yeah.
I remember I was going to, I think I've told this story before, but whatever, I'll tell it again. I was going to go to a town hall with my congressman, and I was talking to one of my friends, and I was like, to be honest, like, I really want to ask him about fake news and like, what can Congress do or what can the government do? Because this problem is affecting us in every aspect of our society.
Right.
And my friend, who happens to be from Korea, was like, hold up there, though. I agree with you that fake news is a big problem, but do you really think that the government should be the one to do something about it? And I was like, huh? And then I was like, oh, right. Freedom of speech. That pesky little First Amendment just gets in the way there. And I was like, well, fine. I'll do it myself then.
We'll do it live.
And I called Elizabeth and we started a podcast. And that's literally the conversation that started my thinking to start this podcast. So what's been going on in the world is there's a lot of countries that are responding to the problem of information or fake news or whatever they call it by starting to pass laws. Now, do you think that's a good idea, Kelly?
I don't. And I'll tell you why I don't. Because I really do believe that you're always going to find people who someone has to enforce those laws. So much, unless you have a really clear-cut definition, you fall along the lines of, do you remember the old court case about pornography? The guy who owned Hustler and how they try to define it as, I can't tell you exactly what pornography is, but I know it when I see it.
Right. Larry Flynn was his name.
Larry Flynn. Yes. So, that's not an acceptable definition, nor should journalism be held to those same kind of standards when it comes to what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And honestly, neither should just people, just regular human beings going about their life. If you accidentally or even knowingly post a meme online that is not correct, I don't think you should face jail time for it. I don't think you should face a fine for it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't love it, but it doesn't mean that I think that you should be punished by our government for it.
Right, exactly. There is some very strong lines that need to be drawn there because it's a very slippery slope. And for example, we have a president, DJT, that calls anything that he doesn't like fake news. and actually really has tried to, I mean, if you think about it, like I read an article about this 20-year-old girl. She goes to college in Kansas and her family lives in Colorado. And she had gone home and filled out her ballot in Colorado and left it on the table. And then in Kansas on voting day, went to vote because she was excited to vote. And her mom mailed in her ballot for her in Colorado. So she accidentally voted twice. And Chris Kobach in Kansas prosecuted her for that.
Of course they did.
And there's this whole notion that DJT has put out there that like there's all this voter fraud and everything. And honestly, like that's the fake news, right? Like this is an honest mistake that's going to be very rare, where a college student is going to have the option to vote in two different areas, fills out her ballot, and her mother sends it in for her.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh, so she's not the criminal that they're painting these people to be, right? Of trying to vote twice. So, and I don't know. I don't know if that's on topic or not, but let's talk about this article. Cause there was an issue that just happened in Malaysia, which is why I was making jokes about Malaysian jail. Do you want to talk about this?
Sure. Yeah. So just last month, a Danish citizen, Salah Suleiman, who is currently living in Malaysia, was the first person to be convicted under their brand spanking new Anti-Fake News Act. And Malaysia, so they're one of the first countries in the world to legislate against fake news. And this Anti-Fake News Act says that fake news is anything that is news, information, data, and reports which is or are wholly or partly false. And that includes print, digital, and social media posts.
Wow. So like you said, who's monitoring that? Who's deciding what is wholly or partly false?
It sounds like it's the police. Like they must have some sort of monitoring system in place. The article I read on this was from Reuters, and this just happened. I believe the article was from April 30th. So this happened within a week. He was convicted because it says that the reason he was accused was because he posted a YouTube video that was critical of the police's response time after a Palestinian professor who was visiting Malaysia, Faid al-Bash, was shot by two men on April 21st of this year. So he said that the police took almost an hour to arrive. They say they only took 10 minutes. So they haven't found the shooters, but they've convicted him, and he has opted to actually take a month in jail because he can't pay the very high price for this crime.
Wow. So basically it was a dispute over how long the police took to get to a murder scene.
That's
or
right.
An attempted murder. Do we know if the professor died in the shooting?
Yes, he did.
Okay. So the dispute is over how long the police took to get to a murder scene. Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah. So in Malaysia, you can be held in prison for up to 6 years or pay a fee of up to $128,000. That's translated to American because I didn't think many of our listeners would know much about how Malaysian money works.
I'm sorry.
I didn't think.
I have to do a check here. Do we know where Malaysia is? Honestly.
We do.
Can you just tell me off the top of your head where Malaysia is?
It's below Thailand and above Singapore. And I know that I've known that for at least 10 minutes.
At least. I actually know some things about Malaysia just off the top of my head. Did you know that it's a federal constitutional monarchy in Southeast Asia that consists of 13 states and 3 federal territories?
It totally doesn't sound like you're reading that either.
What? Wikipedia? What?
I do know, isn't there a capital Kuala Lumpur?
I can't read that fast. Yes, it is.
Okay, all right.
They have a population of over 30 million. Yeah. Here's the thing. I don't know that Malaysia was like a booming tourist destination for Americans, but if you did want to go there, I'd be really, really careful about what you say online.
Well, I will tell you that it seems as though the backlash against this is pretty bad. I mean, the people who were critical of it before it started, you have your usual suspects of people who are always going to be critical. You're going to have media outlets that are always going to be critical of things like this. You're going to have Human Rights Watch. You're going to have anyone who kind of cares about freedom of speech, especially political speech, is always going to be speaking out about these type of regulations, especially when they're not fully thought out. And I know when I was doing research into this, it does sound like they're already planning to get rid of this law.
That's good. It does say in here that a Malaysian media company filed suit seeking to declare the law unconstitutional. So that's good.
I think it's good to note as well that they just had an election on May 9th, it was 10 days after the article itself was written. So, there's a lot to the critics saying that this was meant to be a suppression of political speech.
Right.
Because the law was passed literally 2 weeks before the election. So that does seem kind of fishy. Like, that's not the time you want to pass a law like this.
Well, and it looks like the guy who was arrested said that the video was posted in a moment of anger and that he didn't mean any harm. He agreed that he made a mistake. And he says, seriously apologize to everyone in Malaysia, not just the Malaysian police. And it just sounds like it was just an error. Like, when you are in a situation where your adrenaline's pumping and somebody's just been murdered and you're videotaping something, I'm sure 8 minutes can feel like an hour, and that's not fake news. I mean, fake news is when, if that professor wasn't actually shot and they had faked that whole scene, and then he had said that they had called the police and that they never showed up and clocked it for the 50 minutes and showed that they didn't show up. That would have been fake news. That would have been like a James O'Keefe video, Project Veritas style.
Right.
But that's not what this was. So it's scary because this is like so tiny. And for that
it didn't seem like that big of this seemed like, well, just because what really struck me with this is because he was being critical of the police. It seemed like that's why he was arrested for this.
Absolutely.
And it scared me because I know that in this day and age in America, the reason we're seeing so much about what has been going on forever with police is because we now have cameras.
Right.
And that is the first thing that would go. Yeah. That is the first thing that would be implemented here is you either can't take videos of police officers because you're going to only show a clip of it and it'll be fake news. Right. I could totally see that being the way that this is going to go if they tried to implement that here, which of course they've tried. I mean, they've put a bill through, but I don't see it going anywhere. I wouldn't want it to go anywhere. I would fight for it. I would fight against it. I would fight for it not to go through.
We'd be moving to DC and become lobbyists.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it is such an important topic. I mean, you and I can do this every 2 weeks. And, there's a big difference between us doing it and a government saying, here, these things are the fake news, because it's just going to depend on who's in power. I
was just going to say, it would be really kind of cool, though, if one of these governments took our podcast as their guidelines and they made everybody listen to episode 1, what is fake news? What is propaganda?
Yes.
And then we would inadvertently be suppressing people's rights, with our podcast. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah, I would love to suppress some people's rights.
Okay, so
mostly.
So I just alluded to it, but are there other countries that are implementing laws like this, Kelly?
Well, yes and no. So Malaysia was definitely one of the first countries that have done this, that has actually passed a law. But there are plenty of other countries that have proposed or tried to put through similar regulations or have laws that are a bit less stringent than the Anti-Fake News Act from Malaysia. So countries like Singapore, the Philippines, India, Kenya, France, the UK, the US, Germany, and all kinds of others have considered regulations around fake news, both in social media and just in journalism. Yeah.
Okay, so two things here. So one, I just want to point out that Singapore is just south of Malaysia. And also, with Germany, so the Human Rights Watch has actually urged Germany to reconsider their social media hate speech regulations. So they have this thing that they put in place earlier this year. So I actually took German in high school, so I'm going to try to make my German teacher proud here. This is the longest word I've ever seen, but it's called Netzwerkdurchsetzungsrecht. And that is DG.
I think that's right. Yeah.
German is actually not that bad because they basically just add a bunch of words together and you just have to find where the break is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I had a friend during my master's degree who was German, and she was always like, it's so weird that you could just take all these words and put them into one. Why do you separate all these things?
They stick it all in one. So that's like an entire sentence that they've made a word. And so they said governments and the public have valid concerns about the proliferation of illegal or abusive content online, but the new German law is fundamentally flawed, said Wenzel Michalski, German director at the Human Rights Watch. It is vague, overbroad, and turns private companies into overzealous censors to avoid steep fines, leaving users with no judicial oversight or right to appeal.
So one of the countries I mentioned earlier that has tried to pass and institute a similar regulation regarding fake news is India, which is a gigantic country. So I feel like it would be incredibly difficult to tamp down on rumors, just as it is in the United States. You're going to have certain sections that are going to believe fake news, like any great big country would. And so they did pass a law to sort of go after people who spread fake news and spread these kind of conspiracy theories. But they were criticized for mounting a full frontal assault on mainstream journalism. So India last month, within 24 hours after it was unveiled and passed, they had a sweeping new order allowing the suspension of any journalist so much as suspected of spreading fake news, which it did not define in the law. Yeah. So they had the law, they passed the law, they had it on the books for 24 hours before people were like, oh, hell no. That's not going to work for us, guys.
Wow.
So they had to pull it after 24 hours.
That they did pull it after 24 hours. You know what? They were just doing a real life version of The Purge. They were just trying it. It was only 24 hours long.
You know what? You say that, but we went to go see Deadpool 2 over the weekend, and there's a brand new Purge movie coming out, and it's the very first Purge. And all we did was look at each other and go, this is the Trump presidency. That's how it fucking starts.
Yeah.
So
there's definitely a lot of countries around the world that are kind of starting to, look at like how to handle misinformation. And Pointer actually has a really good guide. It's called A Guide to Anti-Misinformation Actions Around the World. It's being updated continually as they get new information. It was originally published on March 14th. It was actually updated today, 5/22 is when we're recording. And I had pulled it up and it said like updated 2 hours ago. And I was like, well, heck, this is as current as you can get. But it goes through and it talks about every country and what they're doing. And so we've got, I'm just going to read really quick the list. Brazil, Belgium, Croatia, France, Germany, Indonesia, Ireland. And I want to give a special shout out to Ireland because Kelly and I actually recorded a special episode for our Patreon page all about that when that came out, because what they are doing is trying to criminalize the use of bots. If you have 25 or more bots spreading news, then that can be criminalized. Yeah. So if you go over to our Patreon page and subscribe, you can actually listen to that episode. And if you don't, you can't. Haha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Italy, Kenya, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, South Korea, Spain, Sweden, Tanzania, Uganda, the United Kingdom, and the United States. So I want to highlight one here It's one close to home. It's us. So let me get down here. So what it says is the focus is Russian disinformation and political ads. And it says, confirmed by intelligence agencies, Russian meddling on social media during the 2016 U.S. presidential election has resulted in several piecemeal actions from the federal government. First, Congress announced a bill in October that would require online platforms such as Facebook and Google to keep copies of ads, make them public, and keep tabs on who is paying and how much. Essentially, the legislation attempts to impose existing TV and radio ad regulations on social media companies. Now, just at first glance, I don't have a problem with that. Do you have a problem with that?
I don't. That's exactly what we have been asking for with those dark posts. Because that goes back to Cambridge Analytica and all of that meddling right before the elections.
Right. And I think that's why we've probably seen the ads that Russia had, the Russian-backed ads that were bought. There's been a lot of release on that, some transparency on that. So, right. And it says, then in November, representatives from Facebook, Twitter, and Google testified to a Senate Judiciary Committee on their role in spreading disinformation during the election. During that meeting, there was the broad consensus that Russia did manipulate their platforms, but the platforms projected an appearance of control when it comes to monitoring fake accounts and ad buyers. And it does say, these efforts don't directly address fake news as others have reported. So according to this, I'm not seeing much that the government is doing that I'm concerned about in the United States. And in fact, I'm encouraged by what the government is doing. It seems like they're definitely keeping our First Amendment in line with what they're trying to do here. So I'm okay with that. And I think, again, I have only watched the bad lip reading version of the congressional hearings, so I don't know exactly what happened.
You still haven't watched any of it?
I watched a little bit of it. But I keep watching the bad lip reading one because it's so freaking funny. It just makes me laugh.
It is better.
It is. Did you get to watch it?
Oh, I did. When I posted it on our blog, I watched it, and it was a lot more interesting than the actual thing, which is awful and boring to sit through.
So I wanted to bring that up just to kind of ease some people's minds as well, that it's not just because it lists the United States, it doesn't mean that they are trying to take away any sort of First Amendment right, or that they're trying to do anything. Now, that doesn't mean that if, DJT didn't have his way, that there wouldn't be something more. But I really doubt that. I just don't see Congress and Senate and everybody, letting that go through. And even if he did an executive action, an executive order, I don't think that would be upheld by the law. It'd be kind of like his Muslim ban and things like that get shot down pretty quickly by the courts. The courts and the ACLU have been quick to respond when he does things on his own. So,
yeah. And I mean, it would be good to maybe point out that there are countries where things like this are happening, where these crackdown on media are happening, that it's really, really troubling. I mean, I would really suggest going into that Pointer article and taking a look at some of the countries where, even if it doesn't, I mean, they have a asterisk that indicates that, these things do not directly address fake news. However, there are plenty of countries, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, countries that may have historically had some corruption in their background, that they're doing things that we should maybe take a look at, and we should maybe be a little bit more aware of. And I think we probably would be more aware of if we didn't have a shitstorm every 5 minutes in our own country, where we just don't even, I mean, I just want to take a fucking breath. I want to take a breath some days and be able to say, today was okay. Today was all right. No great crazy thing happened, but it hasn't happened yet. It's been a year and a half.
So I do want to mention too, at the top of this point article, they talk about the European Commission commissioned a report on misinformation, and they published their final report, and it basically said that countries should not try to regulate fake news. That's their recommendation. So It isn't. So here's what it says. It says the report, while imperfect, explicitly recommends not regulating against misinformation, but the EU is only one of many governing bodies that have sought to stem the flow of online misinformation over the past months. So then it goes on to talking about some of these other countries. So, I think that obviously there's good intentions and then there's intentions of control. And there's a big difference between that. But let's talk really quick. I mean, Kelly, why shouldn't the law punish those who create fake news? Like, what do you think?
Well, I mean, as much as I would love to see some of the biggest culprits of misinformation, as much as I would love to see them behind bars, like, can you just imagine a jail cell with Alex Jones, Sean Hannity, and Rush Limbaugh sitting with their 10 cups, singing, "Nobody knows."
I have a really good idea. What if we bought Glenn Beck's jet that's for sale and that the jail for Alex Jones, Sean Hannity, and Rush Limbaugh, and just told them they were like going on a vacation to Vegas or something, and we could even let Glenn jump in there, one last ride on his jet, right? And we could just keep them in there.
I'd be really. Yeah, that's a plane that I'd be all right with it if it went down.
What?
It might be the first time those guys have ever gone down. All right. Sorry, it was a joke I had
Mom.
to make. Oh no. Mom, if you're listening, I'm not sorry about that joke.
I was apologizing to my mom.
Oh, sorry, Beth's mom. So yeah, I mean, it would be great to see them in jail. It would be great to see them lose their fortunes. But honestly, I don't want to give up my rights just to see that happen. And the First Amendment protects it. That's what it's there for. It protects our exchange of ideas, even if those ideas are not true or if they're stupid. That kind of censorship can be detrimental to the ideals of democracy. And they can place anyone with an opinion that's aligned with the current governing system into jeopardy.
Absolutely. And the one thing that we can do, though, is put them into consumer jail. We can.
We can
vote with our feet and vote with our dollars. And we can get these guys out by, informing the public so that they start to lose more and more popularity. I mean, all three of those are, how Crooked Media has like the Crooked 8 that they're focusing on for the midterm elections. They have like the 8 people that they're focusing on in California there's Republicans in districts where Hillary Clinton won, and they're focusing on getting good Democratic candidates to win those districts and flip them, right?
Right.
These are like our Crooked 3. I'm sure we could come up with 8. We could add in James O'Keefe. We could add in Glenn Beck. So I got 5 right there. But these are the fake news Crooked 5 that need to go.
I love it. The fake 5.
The fake 5. That's awesome. Episode title.
Yeah.
Via Kelly. Good job.
Yeah, these guys are awful.
And, I wanted to just, actually, speaking of 5, it was episode 5 that Elizabeth and I actually went through and talked all about something that can be done in America to curb fake news, which is defamation lawsuits, such as the one brought by Ciobani against InfoWars, Alex Jones.
Yep.
When Jones claimed that the company was importing workers from overseas using millions in tax subsidies into the town of Twin Falls, Idaho. And because of that, they had seen a 500% increase in cases of tuberculosis, as well as a false story about a 5-year-old being gang raped by refugees at knife point. Jones later recanted the statement and deleted his tweet about it as a result of the lawsuit. But the article is actually still available on the website. And of course, he's not sorry. And, he actually, from my memory, he actually blamed it on his correspondent. So he was like, this is the information that we got from our correspondent. So was that, guess what? That correspondent wasn't fired.
Right.
You think if you have a correspondent gives you such bad information that you get sued over, that maybe you would consider, writing that person up or letting them go. I mean, Billy Bush lost his job at Access Hollywood because he laughed at Donald Trump's idiotic statements and played along with him. And he's no longer fit to be an Access Hollywood anchor, right? Because of the grab him by the pussy tape. But this guy who, works for Alex Jones and is the one that's at fault, he still gets to work there.
Right.
Yeah. It's standards.
Yeah. And, the person who actually said the thing is sitting in the fucking White House, because that's not gross at all.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So I wanted to kind of wrap up today with this really great quote that I found on, it was on a wired.co.uk article, and it's called "Fake News Laws Are Threatening Free Speech on a Global Scale." And the person who says this is Paul Bernal. He's a lecturer in informational technology, intellectual property, and media law at UEA's School of Law. And he said that these laws may come from good intentions or sometimes more insidious ones, but what is certain is that they are not the right response to fake news. Governments around the world need to accept that they cannot legislate their way out of this problem without damaging the media as a whole. A key part of the society the laws are in theory meant to protect. This is a big problem, but no one has a good answer yet.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. And I think that, you brought up the best point, which is we can fight this. We just don't need to fight it with laws. Like, we can fight it as people. We're fighting it right now. That's what this podcast does.
Right. Yeah. So maybe I don't agree 100% with him, because the good answer is to listen to this podcast.
Yes. We should write him and let him know.
Oh, we totally should. And I will, because I am shameless when reaching out to people about being on this podcast.
Yeah. And I mean, there are plenty of other people who are doing something similar to what we're doing. I mean, you and Elizabeth have interviewed people who are doing good work in this. Vanessa Otero, with her media biased chart, is doing a great job. The Will Sumner is doing a great job with Wright Richter, keeping, letting us know what kind of fake news is out there on a semi-weekly basis. And
I've always felt like it takes a village to fight fake news.
Yeah.
And it's like doing this podcast, it's been like building my village up. Like, I've been meeting all these great people that are doing their part, and no one part is going to solve it completely, but you put all those parts together and you start to come up with a solid defense, for fake news. So that's, and I see this podcast as letting people know about that defense. Like, we're letting you know what's out there and hopefully giving you a laugh along with it. Yeah. So yeah, well, good stuff. This is an interesting topic, and it's definitely been getting a little bit of attention lately. So I'm glad we were able to kind of pull some things together and talk about it. So nice. I love this picture. So there's one other article that you pulled from The Guardian, and it says global crackdown on fake news raises censorship concerns. And there's a picture of these protesters, and they all have like tape over their mouth she's holding a sign that says, "I love facts."
Yeah.
And I just want to be like, you're my listener. Like, I want you. This is who should be listening to this podcast. Where was this rally? We should be there.
We should be there.
So, that was in February 2017. Oh man, the podcast hadn't started yet. It was in New York. So anyway, well, hey, you want to jump on over to our jams of the week?
Yeah, let's do it. Do you want me to go first this week, or you want to go first?
Hey, let's mix it up.
Let's mix it. So I just read or listened to a really good book. If you listen to the science podcast, you'll know that I'm a really big science nerd. I love a good science book. I listened to one that is so well done. It's called Get Well Soon, History's Worst Plagues and the Heroes Who Fought Them. It's by Jennifer Wright, and it is funny. I didn't expect it to be funny, but it's funny and very engaging. It's not too science-y. So, if you're not looking for chemical formulas or the structure of virology, this is a book for you. I mean, it goes into one of the first cases she talks about is Frau Trophea, who lived in France, and in the 1500s, she got what they basically called was like a dancing disease. She danced herself to death. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, like the villagers in the people in the same village did the same thing. 400 people died from dancing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, wait, can I tell you really quick about my t-shirt that I bought this weekend?
Yeah, of course.
So I bought a t-shirt this weekend that says "Dance Like Russia Isn't Watching."
That's right. You sent me a picture of that.
I did. I think it's going to be my new favorite t-shirt.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Oh my gosh, that is so interesting.
Yeah.
So I see your notes here, and it also talks about the Typhoid Mary.
Yeah.
And the My Favorite Murder Girls. Did you hear that episode where she talked about Typhoid Mary?
Oh, yes. And she did her Irish accent. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Typhoid Mary gave no fucks. She gave no fucks. I mean, they weren't necessarily all that nice to her. And I think that their episode did a good job of, this does not really talk about how they locked her up for years and gave her
years.
Yeah. And for years and years. Yeah. Because she gave no fucks. She just was like, I'm going to keep doing this.
Like, whatever.
Yeah. She's like, I like to cook. I'm going to cook.
Yeah. So for My Favorite Murder, what they said in that episode, which they very openly say, hey, these might be facts, they may not be, that we give you. So, but what they said is that they figured it out because she made, her specialty was peach ice cream, and she would chop the peaches and they were raw. So a lot of the things that she cooked, because she carried typhoid, but she didn't actually have it. So she was one of these people that had like the virus, but didn't have any symptoms. And she was employed as a cook, and she would go cook at a house and everybody would die. And then she would go cook at the next house and everybody would die. Or like not necessarily like the whole family would die, but everybody would get sick and multiple people would die. And then she would move on to the next house and it would happen again. And they tracked it down to this peach ice cream that she was making because the peaches weren't cooked. And so they kept putting her basically in public health jail and explaining to her that she was basically killing people. And she just was like, I know you're wrong. And I need to be able to cook for people. Yeah. And so they let her out and she did it again. And then they ended up keeping her in there for like 30 some years.
Yeah. Like, but
because she wouldn't stop
her name just so she could keep cooking. Yes. Like, girl, find another trade.
Right. Pick up a duster for crying out loud.
Something.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a good book. Yeah. That definitely sounds good. The title is misleading.
Yeah, most people don't get well soon from most of the history's worst plagues. Yeah.
Nice. Well, my jam of the week is Tame Impala's Elephant. And I just really like this song. And it's got a really like bluesy beat to it. And this has been my dream. Like if I could do video editing, this is what I would do. I wanted to take a video of my kids like trick-or-treating and then do like the stop action video to this song, because it's like dun 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 dun. Like I was like, that would be the perfect video of like just kids trick-or-treat. I don't know why. It's just always been what I want to do, but I don't have that skill yet. I'm going to say yet, because I also didn't used to like know how to podcast edit either. So
yeah, we learn new things.
We totally do. So who knows? This could be the year.
Yeah.
This could be the Halloween where it comes into play. But if you need a little pick me up, and I've been obsessed with a couple of songs lately, I'm not going to lie. And they're all like super slow and sad and just like hella depressing. And I was like, I cannot pick any of these for my jam of the week.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, Elephant, Tame Impala. I've been wanting to do that one anyway. Yeah. So that is my jam of the week. So we are giving you guys a kind of a short episode this week, but you know, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
So
you're welcome.
Keeping it tight. Yeah. Keeping it tight. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. And until then, if you miss us, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Podcast Fake News. You can email us at podcastfakenews@gmail.com. Send us your ideas. If you happen to be a professor or somebody of fake news and you want to be part of our village, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And go on over to our Patreon, listen to that episode about the Irish thing. It's only going to cost you $1 a month. That's it. That's all you got to do.
Just $1.
Just one little dollar.
What are you doing with that dollar? It's your dollar.
Listening to fake news. Come on, your barista shames you into giving them $1 every once in a while, right?
It's true. It's true. And you can always go over to our website as well, podcastfakenews.com, where we post all the links to all the articles we talk about in every episode, along with some funny memes sometimes, and always a link to our jams of the week. So music videos or links to the books that we talk about. You can find them on the blog.
Yeah, and don't forget to rate and review us so that other people can help find us and we can keep fighting that fake news out there. So thanks for being part of our village. And until next time, spread jam.
Not lies.